This is my first ever solo episode. If you begin to do things out of your comfort zone, you might begin to experience imposter syndrome, which was what happened to me, and it happened to me for the first time last year when I wrote my book. That was the very first time in my life where imposter syndrome hit me in the face, like it just. The more I keep doing hard things that I set my mind to, the more it keeps coming, and I'm like, what is going on? Imposter syndrome kicks in if you're a high achiever, so it is very important the circle that you surround yourself with. Counter the negative thoughts with the positive ones. Own the narrative. You come with your negative thoughts, I give you my positive thoughts. I think mine, I caught it at the beginning. I held it by the neck before it penetrated too deep. God, I love this show so much. Hi guys, welcome to The Truth by Maury. I think this is the first time that I would be saying welcome to The Truth by Maury. I always just say welcome to the podcast, and I feel like it's because I wasn't sure if I truly wanted to fly with that name. So a quick backstory of how the name came to mind. I was observing my salad. I had decided that I wanted to start a podcast, but I didn't have any topic or anything or any title that I wanted to name it. So one time I was just observing my salad and then the title just came to mind. I'm like, oh, okay, sounds nice. It summarizes the type of things or topic I want to talk about, and it goes with the vibe of my show. So I'm like, okay, I'll just use it. But then there was something at the back of my mind saying, is this really it? Is this really it? But I didn't want that to be the reason why I was not going to start the podcast. So I was like, you know what? I'll just go with the name. But there's always something at the back of my mind saying, do you want to change it? Do you want to change it? So because of that something, there's always saying, do you want to change it? Do you want to change it? I always just say, welcome to the podcast. But I think today I've come to the realization that I actually do like the name, and it truly does embody everything that this podcast stands for. Whenever I come here and speak to you, I speak my truth. Whenever my guests come here and share what they know with us, they share their truth. And every time you listen to my guests or you listen to me, you get to pick your truth. You get to pick whatever you feel like resonates with your truth from the conversation. So yes, I truly do like the name, The Truth by Maury Podcast. If you're just coming across this podcast, this is a relatively new show designed for the sole purpose of leaving people better than it found them, whether it's by educating them, making them laugh, or making them feel better. And we have had all sort of conversations from women's health to business to finance, and this is my first ever solo episode. What that means is that every time I've had this podcast, I always have guests, but for the very first time, it's just me, which is weird because this is the blueprint of the podcast. It was supposed to be a solo podcast. It was supposed to be just me. But then I thought there's so much I want to learn, and there's so much I want people to learn through my via my platform, and I don't know everything. So why don't I bring guests on some days, right? Tell me why I got so addicted to bringing guests, because all the guests that I've brought so far on my show have been phenomenal. They've always given me some sort of insight, made me more knowledgeable than I was before I met them. And that just got addictive, and I just kept on putting out the episode with guests and then ignoring this. But this is also an integral part of the show. It's important that every now and then I come by myself to just be myself and just share my truth and just share my story with the hope that it resonates with somebody and it does make you feel better than you were before you found the show. So guys, welcome to The Truth by Maury. Hi guys, so before we get into the episode, I have a little huge favor to ask of you. Over the years, I've learned that closed mouths don't get fed. So this is me opening my mouth with the hopes that you'll feed me to stupor. If you as little as enjoyed this show, please like, share, and subscribe. It gives me the extra motivation that I need to keep going because I really want to be doing this for a very, very long time. Okay, thank you. Let's get back to the show. Every time I go solo, I do it with the sole purpose of sharing a story that I resonate with, or a story that I feel like a lot of people will resonate with the sole purpose of maybe finding a solution and giving you that sense of belonging, that sense of I'm not alone. Because if there's anything that I've come to realize about this life is our brains make things more complex than they are. You feel like you're alone. You feel like the world is against you. You feel like your problems are specific to you. Everybody is out to get you. And then just by opening your mouth and sharing your story, you come to realize that this person is also dealing with this. This person is also dealing with this. This person dealt with it and they found a solution. So you are not the problem, you know? And that's why today I wanted to talk about imposter syndrome, something that I feel like a lot of people struggle with. And I didn't even know I struggled with it up until last year when an incident happened and I was like, wow, literally hit me in the face like a strong wave. And before I get to sharing what happened that made me realize that I might be suffering from imposter syndrome, I just want to give a brief definition of what imposter syndrome is according to me. You know that like little sneaky voice in your head that is always telling you that you are not all that, or that everything that is happening to you is by chance and by luck. Whatever accolade it is you are getting is going to stop as soon as people discover how fraudulent you are. And it's stopping you from enjoying the hard work, dedication, and time that you put into perfecting your craft, that you put into making yourself a better person in whatever way or form. That is imposter syndrome. So if you are there thinking that you're not enough, you don't belong, you don't deserve the good things that are happening to you, this video is for you, and I feel like you should watch it till the end. I have my laptop here because I've made some notes, and so I'm going to be looking here every now and then, which is weird, which is not a great idea because I actually need my glasses to see, but then my light reflects on my glasses, which means that I can't use my glasses. And now I have to read from my laptop without my glasses. But I can do it. I can do everything I put my mind to. But let's get into it. So if you ever feel like I mentioned earlier, like you're a fraud, there's like literally you have the blueprint, you have proof of how much work you've put into a project, but for some reason you still feel like everything is happening to you by chance. You might have imposter syndrome. I also have the hair that if you're downplaying your achievement or feeling like it was just luck, everything just happened to you by luck, you might have imposter syndrome. And that happened to me one time. Okay, so let me give you an example. Ever since I started this podcast, I've been doing like 90% of the work, 90 or 80, but I've been doing bulk of the work. And I feel like one of the most challenging part for me when it comes to creating podcasts is reaching out to guests. Even though after I get them and we have the conversation, I'm always like, oh my God, I need to get more guests. But the process of reaching out, researching, filtering, selecting what guests that I want to come on my podcast, it can be a little bit daunting. But what has been, you see, even I'm trying to stop myself from saying, so something strange has been happening. Because why is it strange? Why am I terming it strange? I'm going somewhere, stay with me. Every time I've reached out to somebody to come on my podcast, they've been very eager to, they've been very happy to. And I'm just like, okay, maybe they've been coming by chance. And I'm throwing out of the window that it's because these people have researched me, it's because they've seen the work that I've put out there, it's because they see that I'm legit, it's because they see blah 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 blah. I'm just taking out all the positives and throwing it, and I'm putting in the negative and saying that, oh, they're just coming by chance, oh, they're just coming by luck. Back to back to back, the first like couple of guests that I invited for the podcast, they were all coming through, all happy to support, asking me how they could help. Even though when I started with my circle of friends, I started with my connection, I started with the people around me. But then I went further to reach out to people that I hadn't even met before, and it was still the same vibe. And I still had the audacity to say that it was by luck or by chance or whatever, and just not giving myself any credit, even though I don't really see, I don't even know if this is part of imposter syndrome, but I don't really like to, I'm not gonna blow my own horn or like toot my own horn, or how did they say it, but at least sometimes say, oh, this is why this, because if somebody invited me for a podcast, before I go for the show, I research them, I look at the work that they put out there, I listen to the kind of videos that they've shot to hear their thought processes, to know whether it aligns with the kind of things that I believe in. I do research. I just don't go, right? And one of my guests came on the podcast one time, and it was like, this was Valentine's period when we shot it, and he was like, asking us whether we had plans. I'm like, oh no, we don't go out on Valentine's Day. And he goes, oh yeah, I saw that because I read it in your Substack article. He went all the way to my Substack article. That is not my most famous platform. I write on Substack like every now and then. Even like for the past God knows how many months, I haven't gone on Substack because I've been so overwhelmed. But they did the research up until Substack article to know how this person thinks, how this person behaves, and I'm just throwing all of that out of the way. This was somebody I'd never met before, by the way, and I'm throwing all of that out of the window and saying that it's just luck. One thing about God, though, He knows how to bring me back to my senses, right? And so it was a disturbing factor for me, because I'm like, oh my God, and all of a sudden a time is going to come where people are going to stop coming, people are going to stop answering me, people are going to figure that maybe I'm this and maybe I'm that. And so I reached out to this particular person, and then I got my first no. They were like, they were booked, they weren't taking any podcasts at the moment, blah 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 blah. Cool vibes, cool vibes. I wasn't hurt. Maybe I was hurt. Maybe I was a little hurt, because I was like, sis, if it was Oprah, you're good to go. You're good to go for that podcast. Jokes apart. And then I reached out to this other lady. She also said that she was a capacity for a podcast. So I sat down and I said, God, I get it. I get it. I get the point. And they were really nice about it, by the way. So it wasn't even, it's not even anything malicious. But I think, like I said, it was God trying to bring me back to my senses. I'm like, okay, I get it. These people are coming because they see some sort of value that I bring, and this value is as a result of hard work, or work that I've done in, day out for years, to be credible enough to invite people and have them honor that invite. And ever since, nobody has said no after that, which is weird. I mean, obviously, people might still say no in the future, but that scenario just sort of brought me to my senses, and I feel like it's one of the ways that I deal with my imposter syndrome. Is I talk about, once the negative thoughts start to creep in, I cancel it with the positive stuff. If it says you're a fraud, I say I'm talented and I'm hardworking. There are theories about how people work hard and hard and hard, and no matter how hard they work, they still don't get any recognition up until the day that they die. I'm not a part of the school of thought of that theory. I'm of the school of thought that if you keep grinding, it might not be in a year, it might not be in 2 years, maybe 5 years, maybe 6 years. If you keep at it, one day that light is going to shine on you, right? That recognition is going to come to you. Everything you deserve, you're going to get it. When that time is, you don't know, and that's why you cannot afford to keep. That's why you cannot afford to stop until it actually happens. So what I now do to manage my, or counter or deal with my imposter syndrome, is whenever the negative thoughts come in, I counter with positive thoughts. Whatever it says negatively, I say the positive version, and it has helped me manage. And I realized that it has reduced, I think. Actually, it hasn't reduced. It's almost like the higher I keep going, the more it keeps coming. The higher I keep going, the more it keeps coming. The more I keep doing hard things that I set my mind to, the more it keeps coming. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, where did you come from? And I think the reason why I used to say I didn't have it was because I had stopped doing hard things for the longest time. I was just doing like really convenient, like really things within my comfort zone. So if you do things within your comfort zone, it's like, yeah, you feel like you're a badass at it, right? But I feel like imposter syndrome kicks in if you're a high achiever. It happens to like people who are usually at the top of their games. Some celebrities reported, content creators reported, athletes reported. Imagine an athlete that is, you're winning medals. You know how hard it is to do sports. You know how hard it is to go to the gym and just do the bare minimum. Then imagine how hard it is to train to be the best at a particular sport and you still have imposter syndrome. So I think if you begin to do things out of your comfort zone, you might begin to experience imposter syndrome, which was what happened to me. And it happened to me for the first time last year when I wrote my book, right? And it didn't happen during the book process. It was after the book was out. And every now and then I would get messages about what my book is doing to people. Or if you didn't know, I'm an author. I wrote my book and I published it last year. It's titled Oyinbo Karimu. It's a memoir about my childhood up until the very stage that I'm at in life. And if you have the school of thought of, oh, aren't you too young to write a memoir? Who put an age cap to it? You're not too young to do anything, in my opinion. And then if you have the school of thought that said, if you write a memoir at 20, how old was I? I was 29. If you write a memoir at 29, what are you going to do in your 60s? I'm just going to write another memoir, period. um, so, yeah, after I did it last year, the book took a lot for me. It took me having to revisit some things that I would rather live in the past. It took me having to go years and years back. It drew me out of my comfort zone. That was the most vulnerable I had been in all my life, because this is me putting my book out. This is me putting my story out for people that I haven't even met, some people I would never even meet, you know. So it did take a lot from me. I think that was where the imposter syndrome started kicking in. People would write me, the people would send me DMs on Instagram and tell me thank you. People who didn't send me DMs would send like somebody who they knew that knew me, and those ones would send it to me and just tell me thank you for the things that my book is doing, for sharing my story. I don't know what my story is doing to uplift them. And you know what's funny is when I was writing the book, when it was time to edit the book, when you write a book and you give your editor, and your editor sends it back to you, you have to reread the book. And I was rereading the book, and even the book was inspiring me. And I began to doubt myself. And I began to say, there's no way I wrote this book that I spent months writing. But because all of a sudden it was starting to sound too true to be good, I started to think that maybe I didn't write it. And that was the first time ever in my life that imposter syndrome ever kicked in. And I really struggled with taking credit for that book. And every time somebody says thank you, I just try to brush it away as though they're thanking me for something somebody else did, right? And it has taken constant effort, constant work to be able to say, I did write the book. I did write the book. I do not need the praises. But if people are telling me thank you, I should be able to say you're welcome without feeling guilty or without feeling fraudulent. I wrote the book. I put in the work to write the book. Right? Sometimes people will just tell me thank you for your book. They'll just say thank you. Don't worry about what you did, just thank you. Just really heartfelt, heart-touching messages, some of which I wish I could share on here, but it's a lot of them are really personal. So that was the very first time in my life where imposter syndrome hit me in the face, like it just, and I was so coming from saying that I didn't struggle with it to being hit in the face by it, and that's just kind of what I've been dealing with. And now with the podcast host, and I'm sure when the podcast goes big, by God's grace, because we haven't even started promotions yet, we haven't even started anything. I'm just putting out enough episode so that when people start to see, when it starts to get the recognition that it deserves, there's a whole lot of episode to like go through. And I know that when the podcast starts to do well, I'm going to start to think, I know, I feel it. In fact, a part of me is kind of holding back on the things that I would do to promote or push the podcast, because I'm like already trying to fight the pedestal that it might put me on, because of the thought that I might be feeling like a fraud. If there's any of you that's dealing with it, know that it doesn't hit ordinary people. It's hitting you because it sees you doing great things. It knows that you're doing great things, and all you have to do to counter it is just to say you deserve everything. You deserve everything good. You deserve everything great, everything you have put in work for that is happening to you. So every time the negative thought comes, counter it with the positive ones. It works because at the end of the day, your brain doesn't control you, you control it. So it's what it's telling you. Some your thoughts are telling you something, you tell your brain back what the truth is, and that on the long run I feel like is what your brain is going to stick with. I only learned about my own last year, and I feel like I've managed it pretty well because I always counter it, because I believe. First of all, you have to believe, right? So because I believe that I deserve it, I know that I put in the work. Every time a negative thought comes in, I counter it with the positive ones. It works all the time. One thing I do when I feel like I'm struggling with something or some sort of difficulties, I read. I could watch videos, but reading, it just sinks. It just, I don't know, I just absorb it more. I read, I do research, I'm consuming articles upon articles on how to solve whatever solution I feel like I'm dealing with. And I did some research and I saw some things that were the major causes of imposter syndrome. And the number one on the list, according to the research that I did, is the comparison culture. The internet doesn't even make this easy, right? And a lot of times I feel like imposter syndrome happens to you if you are a naturally talented person, right? If you have the ability to do something that somebody else will have to work hard for, and so you're on the internet, you're seeing somebody say they went to Harvard, they went to MIT, they went to all these places to be able to do what you can do in your sleep. It's very easy to think that you're a fraud, right? Because if somebody is going through all of this to do what is, and all you have to do to maybe just bring everything together is to maybe take like a brush up course on Google, or one of those free courses, and boom, you're like at the top of your game. You're breaking territories, you're entering into powerful rooms, and you didn't even have to do much. It's very easy to feel like because people, I wrote a book, people take courses, classes on how to write, and it just came naturally to me. I'm just thinking, I didn't even take a course and it's impacting people this much. Do I really deserve this? So a lot of times comparison can be like I'm sure you've heard it before, like a thief of joy, right? Where you're just there thinking, I that's just one example. And so whenever you find that creeping in, just find this source or whatever is making you compare your perfect life to somebody else's, and just cancel it or just reduce how much time you spend on it. Another reason that I saw that caught my attention was being the first or the only, the first to go to college in your house, the first to become a doctor, the first to travel abroad. It's like, why didn't it happen to my mom? Why didn't this happen for my grandmom? Why all of a sudden is this happening to me? Am I a fraud? Will people catch up onto the fact that I'm a fraud? And like I said, for this particular one, if you're one of the first, is as a negative thought is coming in, cancel it out with the positive thoughts. You have the power. You always have the power. You always have the control to tell your brain what to think. And then another reason that I saw is the success guilt. Yes, which is just like the summary of everything. Just feeling guilty, feeling like you don't deserve the success because others are struggling, right? You just feel like, and sometimes it's like maybe just driving past and you see somebody who you feel like easily this person can do what I do, but they don't have the things that I have. So why do I deserve it? Right? A lot of times, I think there are different levels to imposter syndrome, right? There are cases where the individual or the victim or the patient of imposter syndrome, you can manage it, but there are cases where it has eaten too deep into you, and you might have to seek the help of a professional or like a coach. Or I think mine, I caught it at the beginning. I held it by the neck before it penetrated too deep, and I started to tackle it head on. And how did I do that? I read books. And one of the books that really helped me is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. That book is so powerful. It helps you see the world in a whole different light. It helps you understand your brain in a whole different light. It helps you know that your thoughts are not you. You are different from your thoughts. The fact that you are thinking something doesn't necessarily mean that it is you. And that is why when I was reading this book, Solve for Happy by Mo Gaudat, and he said, you know how there's this popular saying, I think, therefore I am? He broke it down and he explained how flawed that phrase is and how confusing and how unfair it is. So if you think that you hurt somebody, does it make you a bad person? No, because sometimes our thoughts just come from elsewhere. If you act upon it, then maybe that makes you a bad person, right? But if you just think about it, but you don't act upon it, it doesn't make you like, because thinking that you're hurting somebody but you don't do it is only bad people hurt people, right? But if you didn't do it, it doesn't make you bad. So to say I think therefore, it does have its positives, but in a case where the negative can sometimes be more than the positive, then it's bad. What do I mean by it does have its positive? I think I'm successful, therefore I will work, I'll do everything I have to do just to be successful. That's the positive side. But you are not your thoughts, right? You are what you make of your thoughts. So Mo Gaudat said, I am, therefore I think, right? I am a person. I want to be successful. I'm thinking to be successful. I will act in line to be successful. So it's unfair to say, I think, therefore I am. A lot of people think that once something or like a thought or an idea comes to your brain, that's you. No, no. In a lot of cases, that is not the case. And that's why this book will change your life. It changed mine. It changed my perspective on a lot of things. It made me become less angry. It just opened my view and helped me take control of my thinking power, of my thoughts. And I really feel like if you're struggling with imposter syndrome, it's a really good place to start. So if there's anything you take out of this video, I want you to be that you now know how to deal better with your imposter syndrome. I don't know if it goes. Mine hasn't gone. I don't know anybody's own who's gone. I think as you do high things, as you do great things, it's always going to come if you have the tendencies for it. But every single time, you have the power to own the narrative, to change the narrative. If some weird, sneaky voice in your head says you don't deserve it, you reply it with, I deserve it. Because you deserve it. It's not even, oh, like motivation. You actually do deserve it. So when the weird voice comes, you own the narrative, you take charge, you understand that what you think is not necessarily what you are. And then another thing I do to help me manage my imposter syndrome is I journal. I have a receipt. I write everything that every stage, every step that I take to accomplishing a project or to make something come to life. There's a step-by-step detail. So in the journal, every time I feel like the voice is about to be loud, I go back to my journal and I see that there was a time where I needed guests for the podcast, but I was stuck. And so I did my research and I read articles and I read books and I did this, and I was on the internet and I was up until 1 a.m. looking for ways to make my getting guests easy, and I found a hack. But because I stayed up until 1 a.m., knowing that I had to get up to get the kids ready, right? But I stayed up until 1 a.m. and I found a solution. And now I have guests for the podcast. And now I have a backlog of guests for the podcast. But I put in the work. And so every time I'm reading my journal, it's silencing the voice. It's telling the voice that, no, this didn't happen by chance. I put in the work. So the voice is then lower. And then your own voice of positivity is higher. So journal, own the narrative, and talk to someone you trust. It's very important who you surround yourself with. My very good friend, I know if I call her and I tell her, oh, this is what you're, if I call her and I tell her, oh, this is what I'm struggling with, her first thing is going to be, do you know who you are? Superstar. And it's not in a just trying to gas me. And then she starts to say all the things that I've done, all the things that I've achieved. Do you remember when you stumbled on this thing? Do you remember how you did your research? Do you remember how you were calling people for hours? Do you remember? Do you remember? Do you remember? Right? Speak to somebody that you trust. Surround yourself with people who have your best interests at heart, who know how much of a big deal you are, who constantly remind you that you are who you think you are, you're a big deal, and that whatever sneaky voice in your head is just playing pranks and it's not you and it has nothing on you. And that constant reminder is a major factor in silencing that sneaky voice in your head that's trying to tell you that you're not enough. And that's why I give compliments. I talk about it all the time. When I see somebody who I feel like is badass, best believe I'm telling them. Because what I've also realized is a lot of people who are badass don't realize it. They don't know, they don't see it. People who are badass, how you just see some people and this person is supposed to be successful. It's in their work ethic, it's in the way they carry themselves, it's in the way they speak, it's in the way they do their things, and you just know you are supposed to be a star, but a lot of times they don't see it, or even when they see it, their brain is, or so that sneaky voice is trying to convince them that they don't deserve it. And so my duty when I come across such people is to constantly compliment them, to tell them how smart they are, how positive their aura is, how hardworking they are. I'm always going to compliment people, always. So it is very important, the circle that you surround yourself with. Counter the negative thoughts with the positive ones. Own the narrative, own it, and then journal. Always write your story. Always write your story. Always write it. Whenever you come across a challenge along the line, write it down. Write how you dealt with that challenge. And then when that voice starts, you go back and you read it. I'm really glad that I had this conversation. I was really bottling it up. I don't know if you could tell. I needed to have the conversation. And I just hope that somebody out there watches this and they just know that they're not alone. Imposter syndrome, for my conscious encounter with it, doesn't go away. The more I try to do hard things, the more I try to do, by hard I just mean the more I try to push myself out of my comfort zone and smash my goals, the more present it is, and I don't think it's going anywhere. So I've learned to stop fighting it or seeing it as a devil. You want to stay here, but you're not the boss of me. That's kind of a relationship we have. You come with your negative thoughts, I give you my positive thoughts. And positive always is always gonna be stronger than the negative thoughts, especially because in this you control the narrative, you control the story. And I just need you to know that you have as much power. You have so much power. You are in control. It starts and ends with you. Whatever you accept is what will happen. Whatever you end is what is going to end. Stop seeing it as the devil or the whatever you need to fight. Don't fight. Don't even give it the energy of you fighting. Just when it comes, you treat it like a little toddler and you just go sit down there. I'm smart. I'm deserving. Words of affirmation that you actually believe, right? Baby steps here and there, and you learn how to live together. You learn how to cohabitate in a way where it doesn't dictate your life, it doesn't ruin your mood, it doesn't make you feel bad, it doesn't make you feel like less of yourself, because you truly are not. You are not a fraud. You're smart. You're one of a kind. There's nobody, literally nobody like you. Nobody can do what you do like how you do it, and that is your magic. Do not let one sneaky voice from nowhere come and take it away. You deserve everything good, and you're not alone. If you've ever dealt with imposter syndrome, and if you have ways of managing it, ways that I didn't mention here, kindly share it with me in the comments so that I can also learn from it. I absolutely enjoyed doing this solo conversation. I'm so glad I did, and I cannot wait until my next solo. I also cannot wait until you guys get to see who the next guest on the podcast is. God, I love this show so much, and I hope you guys love it as much as I do. If you do love it as much as I do, please like, share, subscribe. It gives me the extra motivation I need to keep pushing, to keep going, because I truly, truly want to be doing this for a really, really, really long time. That's going to be all today, guys, on The Truth Bye, Maury. I am Maury. Bye bye.